Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome and thank you for joining us on this beautiful Halloween day for our Innovia Foundation workshop on artificial intelligence for nonprofit leaders. We are always so privileged and honored anytime we can gather with leaders of nonprofit organizations from across Eastern Washington and North Idaho, and especially on this day as we cover a topic that is so relevant and so important for all of us. Before we begin, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. My name is Aaron McMurray. I'm Chief Strategy Officer with Innovia Foundation, and I want to welcome you today. We are so excited for today's workshop. As we begin, a reminder that as you joined, we had your audio set to mute. I would encourage you to leave it there unless you want to unmute and jump in later in the workshop with a question or a comment. Would encourage you to leave your video on if you're comfortable doing that. We personally love the idea that this is less of a Zoom webinar and more of a dialogue with trusted friends and leaders from across our region on a really important and relevant topic. So if you're comfortable leaving your video on, we encourage you to do that. As we begin, we're going to use the chat box, and I would encourage you, would you please jump in and give us your name? If you're here representing a particular nonprofit organization, let us know the name of your organization, what community you're joining us from today, and then the fourth prompt, if there was one thing you hoped to take out of today's workshop on artificial intelligence for nonprofit leaders, what would that be? So jump in with your name, your nonprofit organization, the community you're from, and one thing you hope to get from today. And again, throughout the morning, we will be monitoring the chat box, especially as we move towards our Q&A at the end. This is a privilege to gather with so many leaders from across our region. And I want to warmly welcome all of you for this conversation today about artificial intelligence. As always, events like this don't happen without the generosity of sponsors, and our sponsor today is one of Innovia's most trusted partners in our region, Eide Bailly. And I'm really grateful for the fact that Eide Bailly has partnered with us on many of our nonprofit capacity building events over the years, and they joined us again for today's workshop. And we're joined today by Scott LaPlante, who is the audit partner for Eide Bailly and works out of our local office here in Spokane. And Scott, I'd love to turn it over to you just for a brief, warm welcome and greeting on behalf of Eide Bailly.
Thanks, Aaron. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Hi, everyone. As Aaron said, I'm Scott LaPlante, audit partner with Eide Bailly. We're a top 20 accounting firm in the nation with a focus in nonprofit auditing, taxes, and outsourced accounting services, named to provide services that help your organization be successful. Thanks so much for joining today and being part of this spooky topic of AI. We at Eide Bailly are proud to continue to work with and partner with Innovia and support the many great nonprofits in the region. Please feel free to reach out to me or any of our colleagues anytime if you have any questions I can answer. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Scott. We really appreciate your generosity and support. And as we begin, I want to just do a couple of quick introductions and give all of you a sense of where we're headed today. But first, there are a group of very special people who have made today's event possible. Each year for the past many years, Innovia Foundation has been privileged to have university fellows who join our team in marketing and communications roles, providing really excellent leadership and work in the work that we do as a community foundation. And this year we've had 5 of them who are unbelievable leaders in our region. They are all either current students or recent graduates of Gonzaga University, and Paige Cox, Natasha Decker, Madeline Gatewood, Kiana McAnally, and Paige Sealong have been the brains behind today's workshop. They've organized the survey that many of you received. They've put together an incredible nonprofit toolkit, which we're going to share with you as we move towards the end of our workshop, that gives you everything you would need to know to dip your toe and get started in the world of implementing artificial intelligence into your work as a nonprofit leader in our region. And then these 3 have, of course, done tons of research on great thought leaders from around our country and locally, including identifying both Katie Egland Cox and Philip Deng as 2 people who should join us today to share on this really great topic. So I want to give a huge shout out to Paige, Natasha, Madeline, Kiana, and Paige. Thanks to the 5 of you for making today's event so great. And as we get started, as I mentioned, we will share that toolkit with you as we move towards the end of our time. But to lead us off, we're gonna first hear from Katie Egland Cox. Katie is the executive director of Bonner County-based Knicksu Land Trust. And Knicksu Land Trust is an incredible local nonprofit that promotes healthy communities and healthy lands in North Idaho and Northwest Montana. She is a small business owner. She is a serial nonprofit board member. If you want to find somebody who serves on every nonprofit board in Sandpoint, you just need to talk to Katie. But more importantly, and the reason she's joining us today, Katie has done some really innovative work as an early adopter with artificial intelligence. And after Katie speaks, she will be followed by Philip Deng. And Philip is the CEO and the founder of Richmond, Virginia-based Grantable. Grantable is a really incredible organization that we learned about in our research. It's a leading AI-assisted grant writing solution that helps nonprofits and grant seekers win more funding and do it more intelligently, more efficiently, and more effectively. And actually, for those of you that want to learn more about Grantable, you'll have an opportunity at the end of today's workshop to stick around. And Philip, after we finish our Q&A, is going to give us a quick demo of Grantable for those who would be interested. And then when Philip is done, we'll have some time for Q&A. So please use that chat box and let us know what questions and comments you have as we move through the workshop. And with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Katie Egland Cox to tell us a little about Knicksu Land Trust's story of implementing artificial intelligence in your work to benefit our region. Katie.
Thanks, Aaron. Really nice to be with you all today. There's so many of you. I'm really glad that you're here because for almost the last year, we have been using AI in our work, and I have thought on multiple occasions, and I hope I've shared with other nonprofit leaders in our community, the impact that this tool has had for our organization. And I think about some of the smaller nonprofits and how you could increase your capacity and work and hopefully the bottom line for your organizations in using AI. I'll tell you a little bit about the story of how we began our relationship with the person we called Gina Penelope Thomas. So AI, ChatGPT came out, I think, around the end of November in 2022. And I have a connection with somebody in technology, so I learned about it actually quite quickly. And it was over a dinner conversation, and we started playing with it that night. And I found it really fascinating. So this was in the beginning of December. It was, I believe, ChatGPT was still being beta tested at that time. And I brought it quickly into the office. And and at first, I have to say, everybody in the office was very nervous about like AI and how it could actually help us. And I walked my computer around and I just showed everybody, asked it some questions, started to fill in information about our organization. And people in the office began seeing like how it could actually have an impact. And so quickly, ChatGPT got the name in our office. We decided to name her, and she got the name Gina Penelope Thomas. So we talk a lot about Gina P. Thomas in our office. She is an avid researcher. She's sharp as a tack. She knows our work mostly, I will say. She does, like all of us, she does make some errors, so you have to watch her. She's very quiet, but very helpful when we need her. She's always changing too. This is so interesting. Today, when I went on to load ChatGPT, we do have a subscription because she gets to know us better if we have a subscription, and she keeps and retains our information. And so when I went on today, there was a prompt that said, upload many types of documents, work with PDFs, data files, or any documents you want to analyze, just upload and start asking questions, which is actually really, really helpful, because how we've worked in the past is when we need her to know about a project that we're doing, we'll load potentially like a white page that we've written about a certain topic. And that helps fill, because the information from ChatGPT, it's learned up to 2021. So anything that your organization has not, has done since 2021 that's not out there on the web, she won't know about. And so we do a lot of this where we'll load a white page and get her as familiar with a project as possible. And so now this new feature, I'm super excited about it, that we can just upload a lot of our information in there. And the importance of that is having this chat GPT get to know your organization so that it can spit out information. So we do think a lot about it. I know that it sounds weird that I'm saying her, but we do think a lot about it as an individual. And I don't know if it helps us or puts a human face to it, but it helps us keep it helps us keep it really human centered, which is really important when you're working with AI. We find that we always, when we ask questions, we always usually say, please tell us, or please help us write this. We also say thank you. I don't know, very interesting, but I've heard that from others too. But I think it's really important that before you start adopting AI, and I think Philip will talk a little bit about this, that you should create a written pledge that talks about how you will use AI only in human-centered ways, because it's really important to make sure that you as a person are at the forefront of all the information that you end up being able to get out of it, making sure that you're looking at it first and foremost before it goes out to your constituents. So I wanted to tell you a little bit quickly about how we each use AI. So I went around our office and I talked to each of our staff members and said, how do you use AI? So our director of conservation, she and I do a lot of our grant writing. And so she said, mainly she has only used it for grant writing, but she wanted to let you all know that it is an enormous time savings. She said, I can write 4 grants in the time that it used to take me to write 1 grant, which is true. I would back that up as another grant writer. Our operations manager, she has used it to draft a board resolution. And she would tell you that Gina did such a good job. It had all the whereases and the now therefores in all of the right places. So board resolutions. Our director of communications, she finds it most helpful to use it as a writing prompt. So if she's sort of stuck, she will insert information. I want to know more about X. Can you tell me how you would write? And a lot of times when you're using ChatGPT, it's really good to just fill it with as much information as you want. So you say things like, I want to write an article for our local newspaper, and I want to address our initiative on community land trust housing. And I really want people to know the work that we're doing in this particular community. So trying to fill it with as much information, it will learn you over time. It will learn your organization. She uses Jasper, not ChatGPT, for subject lines. When she's stuck on subject lines, she'll also use Jasper for social media posts. She said she wanted you all to know that collaborating with Gina helps me to distill ideas into organized thoughts. I share my random sentences with her, and she organizes related points into paragraphs. Gina Penelope Thomas doesn't do my job for me. She helps me to bring out the best in my work. And I think we have found that in all of the ways that we have used ChatGPT, is it has helped us in terms of capacity. We're a small organization. We're about just under 6 full-time employees. And it really has helped us elevate our work and be able to do things like apply for more grants, be more communicative with our donors because it allows us to write more. So just to give you sort of how I use, as executive director, how I use it, again, the grant writing has been really important. I've used it to help me write policies and procedures. Super boring, but super important to have good policies and procedures at your organization. I have done things like gotten policies and procedures from people that I think do a really good job of it. And then I insert that, I say, I really like this format from this organization. Here it is. Now, these are the policies and procedures I need to do at my organization. Can you help me combine what I need with the type of writing style that this document used? And then it will spit something out. And then we always go back in and edit it, because you'll find that sometimes she's really sneaky, Gina is, and she'll insert things that you have nothing to do with your organization. And if you don't edit it, you might put something out there that you really wished you wouldn't have put out there. I use it to help me write more complex emails when I need to get like a series of points across and I'm not just being, sending that chatty email. I've also used it to write job descriptions, and also to work on letters to donors. So there's lots of ways. I've used it to say, I have these ingredients in my refrigerator. What should I cook tonight? Send me a recipe. I've used it to rewrite karaoke lyrics. There's lots of ways you can use Gina P. Thomas, but I wanted to show you really quick. I was going to share my screen with you, and I wanted to show you, this is our ChatGPT. On the left side is all of the information pertaining to all of the particular projects. And I wanted to put in for you, I did not run this before, so who knows hopefully it's gonna do what I hope Gina does well. But I put in a typical grant writing prompt. This is under a project we're working on in Thompson Falls, Montana. It's an eastward expansion trail project. And so I asked Gina, describe how you will measure, actually, I need to put my prompt in. Please help me describe how we will measure and evaluate the success of our project. This is for a grant application. And then I push enter. Oh, there we go. There we go. Here it is. So here's our qualitative measures. Measuring and evaluating the success of your project is essential for, and I got to move your screen, for a grant application. Here's a framework for how you can describe the methods you'll use to assess the project's success. Here's our qualitative metrics. Here's our increased trail usage, community engagement, economic impact, accessibility, qualitative assessment, user surveys, feedback, stakeholder interviews, case studies, environmental impact, safety and accessibility audits. So it's spitting out all the information. It knows about our project, and now we can go in and we could copy and paste that and then work it into our own language and answer our questions. So that's how we at Connexu have used it. I'm happy to talk to any of you individually if you have any questions or concerns. And I'm excited to hear what Philip has to say, because we're just one of the many users. I'm sure he sees so many users and how they're able to use it at their organizations. So I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to connecting with you all.
Thank you so much, Katie. Really appreciate your insights and your leadership in our region. Thanks for making time and sharing that with us. That was inspiring. Hey, before we turn the mic over to Philip, I would like to actually ask Natasha Decker and Madeline Gatewood, two of Innovia's fellows, to share with us a little bit about the nonprofit toolkit that you've put together. And again, we'll be making this available towards the end of the workshop today. So Natasha and Madeline, why don't you let us know how this came about and why you're excited to share this with nonprofit leaders across our region.
Hi, everyone. My name's Natasha. So today's world is just rapidly changing, and nonprofit organizations are facing a variety of challenges as they strive to make a positive impact in their communities. And so from resource constraints to the increasing demand for their services, nonprofits need innovative solutions to thrive and effectively address the pressing issues of our time. And so recognizing this need, we at Innovia Foundation have developed a toolkit specifically tailored to the needs of nonprofits by harnessing the power of artificial intelligence. And so this toolkit is filled with AI resources and tools and has the potential to revolutionize the way that nonprofits operate and unlock new possibilities, ushering in a new era of effectiveness, efficiency, and impact.
Thanks, Natasha. I'm going to be talking a little bit about how this toolkit has been used and how we have harnessed the capabilities of artificial intelligence to empower you in various ways. So our toolkit includes a lot of actionable ways to begin leveraging AI to optimize and execute projects in a better way. So for example, AI can be used to streamline daily operations, as we just saw through Katie, and can be used to automate repetitive administrative tasks. So one of the valuable features of our AI toolkit is the suggestion and inclusion of AI model suggestions. So you can see that we have listed grantable, assembly, and other projects to tackle things more effectively, even if you're not an expert in the field. So we are also committed to ensuring that AI benefits all while minimizing the potential harms and pitfalls. So with this in mind, we've embedded a lot of ethical principles to empower the users that use this toolkit to deliver responsible results. And we are super excited about the work being done in the landscape of AI and hope that this toolkit can be a good way to streamline the process of implementing AI in the near future.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Madeline and Natasha. We appreciate your good work for researching and curating and putting together a great toolkit to share out. All right, everybody, with no further ado, I'm really excited and honored to introduce all of you to Philip Deng. I really appreciated, Katie, the way that you talked about the opportunity for us as nonprofit leaders to develop human-centered ways of implementing this technology. When I first met Philip, I'd read his articles. I knew he was a thought leader working actively in the space of nonprofit innovation and technology and where the future of technology and philanthropy are going. And it didn't surprise me at all that Philip has become a trusted voice and thought leader as it relates to artificial intelligence as well. And I love the way that Philip talks about that it isn't just that nonprofit leaders need to figure out human-centered and ethical ways to use AI. It's that AI needs the nonprofit sector to guide the implementation and use of this technology, precisely because we are human-centered. And so we're honored to have Philip with us today, and hope that you will be just illuminated by the great insights that he has about artificial intelligence. So Philip, I turn it over to you. Welcome.
Thanks so much, Aaron, and to everybody who's joining today. It's definitely my pleasure to be here, and that was quite an introduction. I don't usually have somebody to reference so directly who embodies a lot of what I hope people will take away from these talks. But Katie, I mean, you're doing it exactly as I envision it and as I see it sometimes, but I think you're early. The word that I will just that came to mind, which I often coach people to think about when they try AI for the first time, is playfulness. And the fact that you've named your colleague, I think that embodies exactly the stance that I try to advise people to take when they're getting familiar with this new technology. And the reason is not to diminish the seriousness or the power of what we're all getting our hands on. It's actually to put us in a state of mind in which human beings learn really, really well. We are heightened to the potential of risk, to the potential of failure and success in a way that we might not be in our ordinary lives. And so I think, as with many things, when we adopt a stance of playfulness, we don't mind failing. It's a temporary state. It's a part of the activity. We can tolerate a lot more risk than we might in other areas of our lives. And we're fairly careful because we are so activated and we're so ready and alert to our surroundings. So I think that's exactly what we need as a sector. And if I'm seeing in the chat, there are a few folks that may be a little bit intimidated or unsure of what this AI really means for each of us in our work. So I recommend very much following in Katie's footsteps and bringing her team into it. It sounds like there's a lot of communication. There's a lot of discussion about human centricity. And all of that is absolutely the best practice as I see it. So what I like to also share with people is that most of my career is in the nonprofit sector. So my first job was a volunteer teacher, first in the Marshall Islands and then in China. I did environmental program management for a nonprofit operating out of Beijing, but across the country. I started a nonprofit that I ran for 5 years in the Seattle area, so familiar with the Pacific Northwest as well. And then I actually ran the grant seeking program for a large land trust and was a independent grants consultant as well. So I like to kind of say that 15 years I've been a nonprofit native, and for the last 2 years I've been a technologist. I've been working with my co-founder Robert on Grantable. But if anybody really wants to get into the weeds of the nonprofit sector, the ins and outs of what it means to work in this space, that's definitely my home. So I'm trying to bring that perspective along with my technology experience to these conversations. So one of the things I wanted to start out with is that I'm actually trying to encourage audiences like this to be a little bit more technical than we might think we are. And what I mean is, I believe in these conversations that I'm having that most of us are using a mental model of software and technology that we've developed over decades of using computers, phones, apps, search engines. That is, we need another mental model, a new one that helps us to understand what's happening when we interact with generative AI. So from appearances, if you type the exact same question into Google and you type it into ChatGPT, both systems are going to give you an output. I mean, obviously, Google will return a list of websites and results that are ranked in a particular way. And then with ChatGPT, you'll probably get an answer back that is in whatever written form you've been engaging with the chatbot in. What's happening, though, on the back end is very different in the two technologies. Most of us are familiar with software where there's some kind of data or database. There is coding or programming in the middle, and then there are controls that we either press on keys or issue commands, and somehow, whether it's a video game or an app on your phone, more or less you're interacting with that data. You're asking for data, maybe changing it, giving it back. Every keystroke in a word processor is a representation of that action. So in that type of technology, we can create amazing things, but a lot of that creativity is coming from us, and it's through potentially thousands or tens of thousands of tiny little interactions that are happening back and forth. That's traditional software. We all sort of know that to a degree just on using technology for the last many years. When you interact with ChatGPT, it's very different. You know, if you put in a prompt, you can maybe get a page of content back, and you've done very little to achieve that outcome. And what's happening is that these large language models have been trained on a massive amount of text, basically on the scale of the internet itself. And what they're doing is they're not considering that text as a database. It's not looking for or mapping the locations of different types of information. So when you ask for a grant proposal response, it's not going in there and searching grant proposal responses and calling up stuff. What it's done, what the researchers have done, the computer scientists have done, is figured out how to calculate the relationships between the tiniest fragments of words at a huge level of computing power. So what's really happening is your prompt is getting turned into numbers, into a pattern. And this massive calculating machine is actually producing each next chunk of text based on probability. So it's actually spinning up the answer. It's completing your pattern. So this is really different from what we've been interacting with as software for a long time now. And one way to illustrate it that I think helps turn on some light bulbs is if you ask ChatGPT, what is 4 plus 4? It will probably tell you the answer is 8. But that is not because it did a calculation like a calculator would to determine that. It's because in the body of text, 4 plus 4 equals 8 has probably occurred many, many, many times. So in its study of that huge body of text, it has created relationships. It has said, probably when I see a 4 and a plus and a 4, it will be followed frequently by equals 8. And it can put words and all kinds of context around it. Now, if you ask it a random 6-digit number times a random 7-digit number, what it knows is number times number probably equals number. And Katie was mentioning that sometimes it just sort of fabricates something out of thin air. It will probably put a number that looks plausibly like the answer to that question, but because those specific numbers have not likely appeared very much in that body of text, it is only going to try to do its best to complete the pattern. So it's going to spin up a number that looks long enough, but likely if you put it into a calculator, it's probably not the correct answer. So hopefully people are kind of understanding now that there isn't a reference action that's taking place. So that leads to my first sort of illustration of why I hope we can all begin to start forming new mental models of what generative AI software does, how it works. But the reason is, the first thing I've been cautioning people about is research. I think a lot of people ask it questions, get great answers, and think, this is a panacea for a lot of our research problems. It will be good as long as the information you're asking is fairly common knowledge, if not to you, at least to the body of writing that's on the internet. If you want particularly precise data that comes from a few different angles, or maybe pertains to a subject that is very niche to your organization, you may not get the result that you want because of how that machine works. It will understand that you're looking for data. It will understand that you're looking for research, and even what kind. But when you finally get to that fact or that number or that statistic, it may just put in something that looks right. There's an article on my blog about a lawyer who even knew of ChatGPT's propensity to fabricate things. And he asked the chatbot to create a legal brief for a case that he was representing a client in. It came up with the brief, and then he asked it, are these real legal precedents that you've cited? And ChatGPT said, yes, these are all real precedents. But what he misunderstood was, when he asked it, are these real precedents? It just broke the text down into numbers and read, is this real? In its data, yes, this is real. Frequently appears in writing, whether it's novels or in blogs or movie scripts, whatever. When people ask, are you serious? Is that for real? A lot of times the person after will say, yes, of course. And so that's what the training means. It's linking relationships between these terms. It does not go out and look through legal libraries and say, yeah, definitely, these are real. So all of the precedents were fake. It made up last names versus airlines, and it was submitted to the court, and the opposing counsel couldn't find any record of any of these things. And it was a big problem for this attorney who had been practicing for decades. So I really caution people right now, if you're going to use it for research, you definitely want to be on a paid program like Katie's organization is. You probably want it to be using Bing or a search engine, which is actually looking through the real online world through digital data. But I'll say right now, I don't do that because I still think when I'm researching, I can actually take in more information and figure out what I want better than the chatbot can. What's happening when you use ChatGPT and Bing to search is that you're interacting with ChatGPT in natural language, which is really nice, but it will take your request, it will talk to Bing, it will look through the results, and it will bring you back what it thinks is the best thing that you're looking for. That may be great, but also, I mean, how many of us have gone through and actually found the result on the second page of the sixth link on, you clicked into it, you dug around, and then you actually found what you're looking for. I think at some point we may be moving towards where researcher AIs can do a really great job. But right now I still don't know what I'm missing, and I still tend to think that humans that know their subject matter can also, or should augment that research if it's really specific. So just to put that out there, that's kind of what I mean by a new mental model of, this is traditional software, this is how generative AI works. Once you start to familiarize yourself with what's actually happening on the screen and how that works, you start to know, oh, for reformatting or drafting or brainstorming or changing the tone, this is an incredible tool. If there's something that only somebody on my team can do, you can also know more with more accuracy when that moment is. So let me just pause there. I told Aaron I would after I rambled on for a long time, but hopefully I've kind of started to create this new mental model, the seeds of understanding of how generative models work.
Hey, Philip, I'll jump in, and because you and I planned that we would do a little interactive piece here. A couple of questions have popped into the chat box about citing sources. One of those most recently by your most recent comment. Have you found that when you do get feedback back from a generative AI platform that you're able to ask it for those sources to get you a head start on verifying data that you've received? How well does that work?
So some of the models, if the model is on its own, I would be very wary of citing the sources. All it's going to do, it knows what sources look like. Once again, we're sort of in that loop. It knows what proper citation format is. It knows what a URL looks like, but it'll just make up a URL. So it'll, inoviafoundation.net / a bunch of numbers and letters, and you'll click on it and it'll just say this link doesn't exist. So it will actually create and fabricate sources as well. So there are, however, if you use it with, say, Bing, and it is going and searching, they are creating methods for it to say, I found this link, this link, this link, and those should be real sources. But this is a tricky problem that I think all of the biggest, Google, Microsoft, Amazon, they're all working on this because it would be a really valuable asset if they figure out how to do this well. But right now, it's still a bit hit or miss.
Great, thanks, Philip. And then one of the questions that was sent in advance that I thought might be a great way to kind of share out some of your thoughts. You've been writing on this topic, talking to a lot of leaders around the country. What practically for the nonprofit sector are some of the ways that you see AI showing up in our daily work in the next kind of 1 to 3 years short term? And then if you could kind of look into your crystal ball a little farther out, where do you see some of these dynamics going longer term?
Well, so in the near term, I don't think I could do a better job than Katie of illustrating ways that you can start to incorporate that into the processes that are at your organization. I will add to it, there's a rough formula that I am kind of playing around with in my thinking, which is these AI tools can save you time. And I think the obligation that our sector should take on is we should try not to just put that time back into more work. I think we actually need to purposefully reinvest time into trust building. I don't think it would come as a surprise to anyone that societally and even globally, trust seems to be eroding. We're not that many decades into the social media era, so this is all hitting humanity very, very quickly. These are unprecedented experiences that we don't really know how to navigate because it's the first time. So I think we're seeing how digital communication, digital identities, digital sharing and content is actually fraying some social fabric that we always took for granted because it was never there were no other ways to communicate than in person, than picking up the phone, than these more nuanced forms of dialogue. I think now, especially with AI, I have not seen a technology that has more potential to erode trust than AI. when you think about fictional or fictitious video, audio, writing, I mean, every possible way that we are represented online can be increasingly well forged by AI systems. So I think it's really important that we kind of keep this almost simplistic formula in our minds that when we save time with these tools, the critical moment is what we do with that time savings. Can we put that into, can every member of the team say in their particular role, okay, I'm going to make time for talking to a counterpart at another organization or a donor or a program service provider. I think leadership really needs to kind of budget for trust building and relationship building in a way that we never needed to before, but I think is going to be really, really important. I will say, I was invited to join the OpenAI forum. OpenAI is the company that created the GPT language models. And I went to their headquarters in San Francisco in August, and they don't even think in 5-year terms. So, Aaron, to your question about, further than 3 years, I just don't think if they're sort of what they're seeing, which I'm not privy to, makes them kind of wide-eyed at the possibilities that we're being confronted with. I think, for me, I consider myself far closer to this audience than to the folks working on these models. So with that said, I think what I think about the future is that when I read these AI luminaries or these most powerful figures in the space, and they talk about why they're doing what they're doing and all the benefits that could possibly come to humanity, they basically describe nonprofit work. I mean, not basically, they perfectly describe nonprofit work. Sam Altman is the CEO of OpenAI, and he wrote an essay called Moore's Law for Everything, where he describes how AI could actually reduce the cost of labor so significantly that he says we will have more time to care for one another, to steward the land, to pursue arts and culture. I mean, perfectly lists the nonprofit sector. And I thought that was too strange to be a coincidence. I think what they're sort of reverse engineering or realizing is that, the sector that isn't profit driven is the one that may be most resilient when AI comes and eats up all kinds of jobs, all kinds of roles in the for-profit sector, where decisions are basically reduced to, is this more or less profitable for the company? So in any role where it is more profitable to use AI than a person, in the for-profit sector, the mandate is to remove that job. Now, in our sector, which has long been derided for inefficiency or mushiness or all these values and things that you talk about, oh, well, now look, all of those things are the high ground. All of those things create the walls, the resilience. And I look at these new models that people have been working on for decades to figure out how organizations can work not based on a for-profit model, but based on values, based on these other higher issues. Now that looks like innovation. Now that looks like essential intellectual property for how organizations may be able to function sustainably in the future. Moreover, if all of those people in the for-profit sector, if we replace them with AI or versions of automation, where do they go? According to the leaders of this sector, they go towards work that is traditionally nonprofit work. So I think, the optimistic case is that our sector needs to get really ready to grow and to imagine ourselves not being junior varsity, but suddenly, starting the game where we are in the main leadership position. And so one of the reasons, the big picture reasons why I've been writing about this and doing these kinds of conversations is, certainly what Katie illustrated with the day-to-day, how you can be more efficient in your missions. But I think AI fluency and AI opinions in the nonprofit sector need to be part of policy and governance. President Biden just released an executive order basically calling out a bunch of different federal agencies and how they're going to start both accelerating what they see as positive AI work in fields like education and research, and also trying to pre-mitigate things like bias, biological terrorism, things where AI can really potentially cause huge harm. So that's the conversation that I think the sector needs to be conversant and active in. So that's sort of the really big picture of what I see. I don't know in sort of years or what when that I won't call that, but I think directionally that feels right to me, and it feels like there may actually be a convergence where AI represents this meeting point where the nonprofit sector and the way that we have done our work will be as important, if not more important, than even the work itself.
Philip, before I do a call out again and remind folks to put questions in the chat box or unmute for our Q&A, there was a lot of, in the introductory comments, quite a number of folks who just asked questions about how do I get started? I'm intimidated. I want to understand the ethical concerns, even a really thoughtful question about those of us who run faith-based organizations. Are there particular ethical issues? Could you just talk about some of those things that you've seen with nonprofit leaders on getting started, moving past some of the intimidation and the basic ethical concerns to begin to implement this technology into our work?
I mean, is it appropriate for me to ask Katie to jump back in? Because I feel like I would be providing second or third person knowledge where, we have a practitioner that just did it. So I think better able than I to say, and I'll maybe add some sense at the end, but.
Yeah, that sounds great. Katie, would you like to jump in on that one?
Yeah, I would just say, and that is always the ethical part is at the forefront. And I think that's why you make sure that there is still the human involved in the output. So you saw that you guys saw firsthand when I put that question in, what was spit out. Well, we use that as the framework, and it actually sometimes involves, helps us to think further about a project, or think about, in this case, measuring, and how we can make sure that we're measuring a project. So it's making sure that when you think about the hierarchy of the information, that you are putting yourself and your thoughts and your process first and foremost. And it's another team member really helping you to solve some of the problems that we face, and some of the challenges and tasks that we have. We all know how much we're required to do at nonprofits and how many plates we keep spinning in the air. Hopefully it gets a little bit at what Philip was talking about, is really an additional resource that allows us to keep the work in a manageable capacity. Aaron, I don't think I answered the first part of that question though.
I think the other piece that I saw there was just, the intimidation factor for a lot of folks, and just how to get started. And I think you touched on that a bit at the beginning too, Katie.
Totally. It's how to get started.
Yeah.
And there was some great comment on about getting a subscription. And I would say it's probably the best money spent at your organization would be to have a subscription, because then it does retain some of that knowledge. It does retain the knowledge that you feed it, but you have to feed it. Somebody else commented about that. We keep separate chats going for separate projects. So for instance, we have a rewilding the playground project particular. So we have a chat for that where we fill it in. We give it all the information about what we're trying to do, what schools we're working with, what our outcome is, and then we can start asking it the questions. And then we also do a lot of work in correcting it if it's not right. Because it is going to try to do what Philip says, go out there and grab different information. But I would say the best way to get started is just go into it and go to the website, enter a question you have. It doesn't have to even be about your organization. get to learn how you ask questions of it and then what comes out of it. That will help you get to know how to interact with it better. The more information you can put in, the better the information that comes out. It's sort of a little silly, but maybe think about that when I said we put the ingredients that are in our fridge and ask it for a recipe. Well, get a little bit more specific. What do you feel like eating tonight? Do you feel like eating something that is you want tonight? I want Mexican food, and this is what's in my fridge. And so it gives you more specific, the recipes that are Mexican in nature. So the more information that you can give it, then the more it gets to know you. It's like, and I say that, it's Gina. It's more, the more I talk to Gina, the more Gina knows about me. And there was the one question about just about sensitive information. We don't put sensitive information in there. We don't put information about donors. We don't put names. We don't put amounts. We really put only information in ChatGPT that we would want out there in the public realm. I'm not shy about putting information about our rewilding playground project in there because I want everybody in our community to know what we're trying to do there. So, but do think about whatever you put in there, make sure that it's information that you would want out there in the public realm.
Well, so if I can jump in there, I think so that's what I was kind of saying. A lot of folks are concerned that the information they're putting into ChatGPT is going into some common reference pool. And it's not really, I would say. I mean, if you really look at it, so if you're on a paid plan, the policy there is that they will not use that information as part of their training or product improvement. If you're on a free plan, you can opt out of it, but by default, your activity is subject to potentially being used to improve the model. That said, even if you said, here, take all of my stuff and put it into your training data, when you talk about how much text is being kind of just mashed together and analyzed, it's almost, I would say I don't know this for certain, but it's almost mathematically more likely that somebody would hack your actual hard drive where you keep that information and take it than somehow it randomly spits up the mathematical sequence that your thing would come out verbatim for somebody else, especially because they're not really asking for that information. So I think I say that just to kind of reiterate how these things work differently than software before, and not to kind of say, oh, we don't need to worry about privacy, we don't need to worry about security, but actually that we need to worry about privacy and security in a new way. Like we really have to think about not only what does it mean when our stuff is in a private data, but now that everything you do share out, everything you tweet, everything you publish, that could get scraped and become part of a model. And then people could start to imitate you. So it's your likeness, it's your style. These are things that we really didn't have to worry about as privacy or plagiarism concerns or intellectual property concepts. And now actually we do. My wife and I were just having a discussion about whether or not we wanted our wedding photographers, the vendors asked if they could use our photos in some of their own advertising. And we had a discussion last night, we want more representation of couples like ours to be out there, but we also don't want, AI to scrape it. We don't want our likenesses to be, fed into different algorithms. So that's kind of what we're really talking about now, in terms of where you need to be careful, I would say. So Katie, I hope it's okay to just add on to what you're saying.
Yeah. I mean, that's the thing is like, I'm always learning too. So I really appreciate, this is great.
Yeah. So Aaron, how are we
get towards the top of the hour? I thought I'd open it up. Hey, everybody, we're going to invite you. If there's a burning question, please feel free to unmute, introduce yourself, ask Katie or Philip. And then as we get to the, a couple of minutes after 12 noon, we know folks need to jump away. We're going to pivot and let Philip give us a little test drive of Grantable. But before we do that, jump in if you've got a question that you'd love to ask either of our presenters.
I just saw the question about, do you think AI will be used for looking at grants, like reviewing grants? I would guess, I would hope so. I think that would be super efficient. Aaron, I imagine you guys would love that.
So
No comment.
yeah, I think it could be, but I think the job application market serves as a pretty good test case for what would happen. What I don't think we want is bots talking to bots. I don't think, because I think you can get some feedback loops, and pretty much you'd approach this one particular format, and I think it's not ideal. What my company is working on is actually that we'd like there to be fewer grant proposals, but the information and the decision making, that should be shared more widely. More people should be able to base funding decisions on a particular grant application or decision than needing to apply 10 times. I think that's where we can find more efficiency in the sector, not necessarily saying, oh, let's just increase the number of grant proposals and have AI write them all and have AI evaluate them all. That's removing the humans. That's not a human-centric way to operate. But I think we can use AI to help, say, find patterns in data that can allow other human beings to make a funding decision without needing a full grant application. So I think that's where
I'm all for efficiency.
Absolutely.
Everyone, we put the AI toolkit in the chat box, and yeah, if folks want to jump in with a question or a comment, now's the time.
We have tried some of the AI imagery. Like, I want a picture of a little girl in the forest holding a cedar branch. It's weird. I mean, maybe it'll get better over time, but I just think that I haven't found a better replacement for real pictures of real people and doing the things that capturing, the work that we're doing.
I've had the same experience. I think it's probably going to get astonishingly good in a short time. So I think that is something that we will have to confront as a society. That's not going to be a nonprofit sector specific thing. I think there are just going to be really, really captivating ways in which imagery that's generated by AI starts to appear on our walls. We're going to be watching shows that are created in this way. So I think it is a new frontier. The intellectual property concerns there. So that is definitely a team effort, though, as far as how we figure out what that looks like. But for now, I agree. Like when I do my blogs and stuff, every once in a while, an AI image will kind of fit the need, but oftentimes stock photos and things like that are still better.
We have one question here I wanted to read out from Josh. It says, are there any models currently available that are only trained from company-provided information?
Not that I'm aware of. And I think the reason is when you think about even the largest companies and how much information they have, it's a drop in the bucket compared to the amount of information that is being used to train these types of these models. I can't remember if it was GPT-3, but it had, I think I saw it quantified where the text was something like 2 million times the English language Wikipedia. So, I mean, it's just, companies don't have that amount. That said, the models themselves are shrinking. The math is getting more powerful and more precise. So Facebook keeps releasing these very small models that actually have quite a bit of capability, as is their style of just dropping stuff into the world and breaking stuff. So I'm a little worried about that, honestly, because what that would mean is instead of a company with many people and governance managing a model like GPT, any person could have a model on their phone, on their personal computer, and determine what kinds of safety or lack of safety guards there are. So the models themselves are going to start to shrink. And so I would expect that someday organizations may have sort of the what is it, the successor of what Katie is building with ChatGPT. It'll actually be a model itself that is really dedicated to the organization or to even to the individual. So that is probably, I know there are a lot of people working on that, and it seems like larger and larger data sets, more and more computational power. A lot of people think there may be a plateau to the new abilities that can emerge, whereas improving the mathematics, potentially is the next area where people will improve these things. Does anybody want to see, or is this the time to take Grantable for a spin, Aaron, or what do you think?
It absolutely is. Thanks, Philip. And along the way, folks, if you've got other questions, feel free to put those in the chat box. Those of you who are jumping away at this time, we'll continue to record and share out Philip's preview of Grantable. But Philip, I'll turn it over to you to walk us through. And again, a big shout out to eidbailey and a warm thank you for their sponsorship of today's event.
Okay, so a lot of actually what Katie was describing is how you would also kind of use Grantable. I think it's a little bit different, but this is a real live account. Can you all see it just to check? Okay. Yep. So I just created an account. It's just a demo. And what you would do is you would upload a recent grant proposal or writing that's high quality about your organization that contains the information you'd use. So these are fictionalized, so don't worry if you read anything in here. But so I've just uploaded 2 docx grant applications. This is all fictionalized information, but you kind of see program, request amount, mission, vision, all that kind of stuff, right? So then you can either create a new file, which is just a blank word processing space. And if you need to grab the info from whatever application portal and copy paste, we've all done that. You can do that here. Or I just got this application sent to me this year from the Seattle People's Fund. So this is a real application that came into my email. And so instead of the old school way, which is where I would just start opening tabs and Control F and looking for all the snippets that I want and copy paste and then rework them, or even the slightly newer way where I think Katie's team is putting in, hey, ChatGPT, here's a bunch of information, copy paste. What you can do here is just highlight, the question you want help on, and then you do Control J. And just for speed, I'll go into a few more features, but you just go answer this. And what it's doing is it's searching the other 2 proposals that I uploaded, and then it's answering the highlighted text. So in this way, you don't have to rely on the memory window of even the pro account of ChatGPT kind of runs out. You also don't have to go digging for stuff. And then, instead of copying and pasting it into Word, you can just have it add to the document that you're working on. And then you can, edit it just like you normally would with your team, wordsmith it. As Katie said, you're kind of the ultimate owner and you're responsible for what's going out. So that's why we've really tried to bring AI to your fingertips when you need it, and then get out of the way and let you just be a writer again when you're working on it. So also, if you decide this is too long, again, you can just highlight anything on the screen, bring up your AI. You can say, shorten this. You can say, shorten it to a certain character limit. And so it really starts to help not only with the drafting, but revising, reworking tone, all that kind of stuff can happen as well. And then there's also a cool feature that we've created where you can extract numbers from a given file in your account. So what it will do is it'll pull all the specific KPIs, figures from your proposals, and it will give them a label. So if you wanted your operating budget, you can add that as a number in your account. And then the next time you're going in and you're asked for, yeah, I don't know if this was the whole budget, you could ask for that and just do, # and then find all your key stats that you want to keep in that little quick reference area. So that's kind of a cool way to keep your numbers more consistent. And then also I wanted to say, I just did the fastest possible way to answer this, but you can also fine tune. So that's really important when you're working on grants. So if you wanted to answer this, but you actually open up this icon, you can suggest sources, which the AI will go looking through your library for things it thinks it should use. But we also, I mean, most people know best where your snippets are, where your information is. So when you open this search feature, it's still like this very powerful Control F that searches across all of your different documents, and then it finds every instance of your search term. So you can quickly look through your whole library, and when you find something you want to use, either just yourself or you want to add it to the AI's source material, just highlight and do Command C, like copy, and you can see it says added to a snippet. I can paste this onto the page if I want, or it's now been added as a source that the AI will use to draft your writing. So in this way, we're really cutting down on what people call hallucinations, where it's sort of making up its own stuff. We're really tightening the parameters and saying, please use this to answer this. And it really focuses in on your information. It sounds like you. It uses your facts and figures because that's the source material. The last thing I'll show you is when you click this folder icon, however you structure your account. So in Grantable, you have the ability to make folders and store things however you like. I highly recommend people keep an organized content library. But what we allow you to do is also point the AI at specific files or specific folders to limit down where it's looking for information, whether it's you looking or if you have the AI just do the suggested sources. That's another cool feature that we hope you find pretty useful. As a grant writer myself, that's where a lot of the inspiration comes from. So as I was saying, you can create folders here and drag and drop things in. And so keeping your library nice and organized. We were talking yesterday in a demo, can it do reports? Can it do letters of interest? Yes. And what you can do is in a blank document, you could press space bar to bring up the prompt, and then say, please write a letter of interest to the Innovia Foundation using these sources. And then I could go and find, let's see, overview. Let me just take this and see what happens. So if I do Control C, add that source, and then say, actually, I don't need it twice. Let's see what it does. Oh, wow, it got is that your address?
It's pretty close address, almost.
You got to check that stuff.
Yeah.
So let's see. So I'm just going to have it put here. So as Katie was saying, you never kind of
Nice.
know exactly what you get, but here you go. It's a letter of interest, and it's introducing
Nice.
the program correctly. So you can do a lot with this. You can have this, stay in folders of letters of interest and then draw from that when you need, or reports, draw from that when you need. So anyway, I'll try to go back to, I'll stop sharing so I can see people in the chat.
Yeah.
Cool.
Great. Well, thank you, Philip. That was excellent, really helpful. And I'm wondering if you would be good with putting contact information in the chat box so that folks can reach out to you if they'd like more information.
Yeah.
And we're at about 10 minutes past the hour. Thanks for those of you who stayed with us. Any final questions or comments that you'd love to ask Katie or Philip, and then we'll close out for the day. All right,
Thanks,
well,
everyone.
you're welcome to reach out to either of them individually. We'll share out the toolkit tomorrow, as well as a copy of the recording. Thanks again for all of you for joining us today for this conversation. We're grateful for your work. We at Innovia feel like we have a front row seat to the incredible impact happening around our region. So thank you for the work that you do. Thanks for joining us today, and happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween, everybody.
Happy Halloween.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks, Philip. Thanks, Katie.